We are back. Welcome to Street Tales. And we have a guest that has probably been about a year and a half in the making. We've been trying to get someone, not this particular person, but someone to come and talk to us. And thankfully, I was so blessed to bump into this gentleman and then chase him down in a parking lot and him not think I was weird when I did it and tell him that I really, really needed him to do this. And he took me up on the offer. So, we have today Dr. Glenn Davis here to talk to us about first um, his personal life of service that he's done and serving other people that have been in crisis, and then how he faced his own crisis to an extent, and it led him to find ETMS, which is something that several of our guests have spoke about and sung the praises of because they have talked about how much it has helped them. And he now works for ETMS. So he's going to give us a little bit more of a backdoor view of what it is, what ETMS is, how it's helping people, and what they are really striving to do. So first, let me tell you, thank you, Glenn, Dr. Davis. I don't know how you want us to address you, but thank you for coming on our show. We really appreciate it.
No problem. Glenn's fine. I really appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you, sir.
So, we always start out similarly to just get a feel for knowing people's story, because I think, first of all, I think they're very interesting. We have found out people were ballerinas and going to school for other things, and all of a sudden landed in the lifestyles that we are in now. But I like to know, we like to understand, where did you grow up? What led you? What was your life like growing up with your family? And then what led you into being a first responder? Tell us what I know you were a paramedic, but tell us how it led you into that field.
Sure, no problem. And I appreciate the question. So started off with a typical, suburban nuclear family, and I'm a Florida native, proud Florida native. I'm actually from here, and sometimes people are like, "Wait, really? You're from here?" Yes, we do exist,
We do
and
exist.
yeah, typical suburban Gen X um, growing up, and a funny thing happened on the way to med school. Was in the pre-med society at the local university, and I was duly informed at our first or second meeting that if you didn't have a stellar GPA, choose something else. That was a polite way of putting it. And I had two friends of mine who had already gotten into EMS, and they were already working as EMTs, and one of them was also working as a volunteer firefighter and building their career. And we'd all run together in high school. And he goes, look, the next day, next morning, whatever it was, meet me down at the local community college. I'll get you signed up for EMT school. And so that's how it started. And so went through EMT school, started working on the ambulance. And the question that comes up, and I would also ask my students later on when I became an instructor, why'd you want to become paramedic? And everybody has different reasons, but for me, it was really two reasons. I wanted to know more, and I wanted to be able to do more. That's really what it came down to. And so went through paramedic school, went to local community college, and had two great instructors. We had a really large cohort the year we went through. And after that, continued working on the ambulance, and then eventually transitioned over to Fire Academy and began in the fire service. So that's kind of a brief synopsis of how it all started.
Love it. So no one else in your family had any, first of all, let me back up. You said you were in med school.
Headed to med school.
Headed
Funny
to
thing
med
happened on the way to med school. Yeah, so
Okay.
undergrad.
How
Undergrad.
deep were you into it? Because
I was in my junior year. I was in my junior year. So that's
Yeah.
really the takeoff point. You start talking MCATs and everything else, and that dream, that path, kind of it took a turn. Turn for the better. Turn for the better. I used to tell people I practice street medicine. So
there you go. There you
I
go.
love it. You know what? I don't know if that's been out there. I love that. I'm
Yeah.
enjoying the street medicine because that's so accurate.
I find it funny too because our paths are very similar. I went to school as a pre-med biology major and I made it to my junior year as well. And I was like, this
really,
is not for me. So, um, were there any other people in your family that were involved? I know you said you had some friends, but any other first responders, whether it be law enforcement, firefighters, or
yeah.
any of that?
No,
So
first one in the family. However, full disclosure, my paternal granddad did serve as a volunteer, quote unquote, ambulance driver in his home state of Illinois many, many, many decades ago. There was at least one picture of him in the full white uniform with the white cap. This would have been probably pre-World War II. So
wow,
Dang.
very, very early. And from the fire side, I like to tell the story about my great granddad who was in the coal mines of Kentucky. And legend has it, he was the fire in the hole guy, one who would set the charges and then run out and tell everybody to clear
Run.
out. So, so I point to those two ancestors to say, okay, here's the fire side, here's the medic side.
that makes sense. That makes sense. So, you started out though as a paramedic. How long did you do the paramedic side of the house?
I was an EMT in the field, and then went paramedic. Was paramedic on the ambulance for about a year or so, and then I transitioned over to the fire service, became a firefighter, went through fire academy and all that.
Okay. And as a firefighter, were you always crew, or did you supervise units? Did you have people that reported to you at a point in your career?
But as far as on the fire department, I did work for a couple different departments. I was a firefighter-paramedic. Occasionally, I'd had the opportunity because I took additional classes and training and testing and
Hmm.
certification that I would got the opportunity to act. So acting lieutenant, acting EMS supervisor, but never promoted up into the role.
And I do want to point out that at the beginning of the episode, I addressed you as Dr. Davis, and that even though you did not go to med school, you did become a doctor. Is that true?
So full disclosure, not a physician. None of what I say is medical advice. So there's my disclaimer.
Yeah.
But I did complete my doctorate in health science. Very proud from ATSU, AT Steel
Absolutely.
University, which is the you would say the beginning of osteopathic medicine in the U.S. So it was Dr. A.T. Still that was a founding factor in that. So very proud of being an ATSU alumni. Program was great. Really enjoyed it.
Awesome. Yeah. I thought that was important since you said you went to medical school, that people did recognize that you did become a doctor after all.
Not a physician, not
Yeah, I
Not a
med
understand.
school.
physician.
So doctorate in health science, doctor.
There you go.
Real quick, Mo. Glenn, I just have to ask two questions. One, when you were on the road working as a EMT paramedic, I know there's a difference, but most people kind of lump them all in together. Not any no disrespect on that. I understand there's more training to be a paramedic, but was there a moment? It's a two-part question. Was there a moment when you're like, I love this, and then on the flip side, I made a bad decision? There has to have been some calls on both sides.
Yes and
Okay.
no.
All right,
Yeah,
go.
yes, from the get-go. Um, Thoroughly enjoyed EMT school. Had a fantastic group of people I was with, a fantastic group of instructors. One of the instructors has been a mentor my entire career.
That's
A lot
awesome.
of us have kept in touch since EMT and paramedic school. Actually got a chance to work with a few of my fellow students at the time. Got the opportunity to work together. No, really never had that thing that, you know what, this is not what I want to do. I think I'm going to go sell aluminum siding. That never occurred. So two things. I went to EMT and paramedic school first, and then went to the fire academy. And here's what I found out in the fire academy. I love the heck out of fighting fire. Absolutely loved it. So here's the thing, I would get asked, well, early on in the career, are you a firefighter or are you a paramedic? I'm both. I'm both. Well, why can I not be both? And I thoroughly enjoyed both jobs. When we would have those days, because those days did come up, it was a really tough shift. I would just tell people and remind them every time that, because we did have a lot of folks that came into the fire service that were from the construction industry, contractors, general contractors, carpenters, concrete
Hmm.
guys, which was really good on the off-duty stuff if you needed some help. It's like, hey, I got a question.
Yeah, I'm right.
I had a fellow firefighter help me, tile our house, and that was great because I had no idea what I was doing. But we'd be driving back to the station, and more than once, we'd see a crew of roofing out roofing a house in the middle of August. I go,
Oh,
hey, I go, hey, we got a tough job, no doubt about it. We got a tough job, but we're not doing that.
We're not doing that.
So you take the good with the bad, and do you have those moments? It's like, okay, kind of like the old Top Gun um, quote. Hey, Mav, you still got that truck driving school phone number? No, never had. Sorry, the movie trivia. Those are free, no extra charge for
love
that.
it.
Love it.
Love it.
That's how I kept students, paying attention because like, what is he gonna say crazy next? But yeah, I never had that moment. It's like, you know what? I think I'm gonna go do something completely different. Uh, Loved it. Still the best job in the world.
So I'm going to say this because so my exposure to firefighter in yeah, I kind of lump them all together, and I apologize for that. It's no disrespect. It's just a lack of vocabulary, I guess. But Hillsborough was the biggest one
Yeah.
because sometimes they'd both come. So I kind of learned a little bit, and I used to always go because I saw stuff on the road, and I'm not trying to be disrespectful, but I was like, ooh, and the guys would jump off the truck and just dig right, like it didn't phase them in any way, and they were just very matter of fact. I'm like, that you have to be. It's either a learned thing or you're just different breed of people. Because I'm like, that is gross. Now, again, I appreciate what they're doing. Somebody's in a
Yeah.
but you know what? I'm not trying to be nasty on the show, but stuff happens to your
Right.
body when bad things are happening,
Right.
and it's
Right. Yeah.
not ideal.
Yeah. Uh,
But I never saw anybody flinch.
when the tones drop, you go to work. Uh, and
Lock in.
and then it's afterwards. I got taught at a very, very early age in my career by my first company officer at a structure fire my first night. I hadn't finished the fire academy, so that means I had to stay outside, couldn't go in.
Okay.
But I was taught very early in my career on some things. Hey, don't do this. This will get you killed. But one of the things I was always very consciously aware of, especially on structure fires, and it's part of the mental preparation that's necessary to keep yourself alive. We talk a lot about situational awareness, keeping your head on a swivel, these type of things. Wow, you just brought to mind a couple of near misses over the
Yeah.
career. Yeah, I didn't. Yeah. Anyway, I was fortunate. I was lucky. I was lucky a
We've
lot of
talked
times.
about that on the show. We both have had
Yeah.
those, yes.
But at the moment that I would click in, at the moment I would click on the regulator into the face piece and take that first breath of air off the SCBA, I literally felt invincible. And years later, when
Hmm.
the first Iron Man movie came out in 2008, I'm like, that's it. That's exactly what I felt like. But I also knew at the same time that kind of mindset will get me killed because
Yeah.
I got you.
you're not invincible. You're not
Yeah.
invincible. So there's a lot of mental awareness that has to go into it, and that's part of our training too. That's we do a covered mass drill in a maze on air with a partner. Where you have to find your way through this maze. So there's a lot of our training that goes into it that gears towards that situational awareness, the decision making under stress, those type of things.
Right.
Two more things, Mo. Sorry.
No, you're fine.
One was perspective when he was like, hey, not roofing in August, especially in Florida. You brought to mind a memory I have had, I haven't talked about on the show, but early, like high school, I would do, they called it labor ready. So I was just, I was a high school kid trying to get some money. You'd make like, I don't know, 60, $70 a day, which was a lot of money for me. And I went and I laid concrete. And I brought one shirt, which for people who lay concrete, they always have like 10 in their car. And I learned why, because you soak through the first one. And I'm like, oh, this is wet. So I took it off and I was like, I'm a Florida kid. I'm fine, whatever. My back burned. So like I'm not trying to be vulgar. You could peel sheets of skin off my
hmm
back. And
hmm
so whenever I was doing something that was like not fun, going through the academy work days, 16, I was like, I would have that memory in my head is like, I'm not doing that because
hmm
that almost broke me. I'm not even that messed me up for a while.
I'm not even gonna lie, right?
Yeah, God bless them, because that is well,
That's work.
backbreaking and back burning work. Um,
Yes.
Last question, and then we'll keep it moving. But I don't know if it's just how it is or it's just standard, but I find that a lot of firefighters were former EMTs, paramedics, or something like that. I guess my question is that either a standard to become a firefighter? Is it just kind of a natural, not, no, that's what's not the word, not attrition,
Progression.
the progression. Thank you, Mom.
Hmm.
Or is that a natural thing?
That is a awesome question.
Okay.
One that I love answering, and I've discussed this numerous times because the question comes up all the time. So here's my answer: yes and no. And the reason why I say that,
Yeah.
is, and I know this podcast is going to go, to, you know, all directions, north, south, east, and west.
Yes.
Um, but there are as many ways to do EMS as there are stars in the sky. Just in the state of Florida, you got a couple of hundred EMS providers and a couple of hundred EMS medical directors. So that kind of gives you an idea of the variation. And we talk about our local, metro area here that covers about 3 or 4 counties. And even in those 3 or 4 counties, no fire EMS system is exactly alike. So when you're asking about that natural progression between EMT to paramedic to firefighter, the best way I can answer that is it depends on where you work and depends on where you live and depends upon the state.
Oh,
Our state is a little different. There are other states like it, but it is kind of leans more towards heavy, fire-based EMS. But we have also got private EMS. We've got third service. We've got volunteer. It's just that at least in the state of Florida, in a lot of the larger metro areas, we've got a heavy mix of fire-based EMS. And the reason why I bring that up, and I love your question because the question will come up all the time when I was teaching and program director. It'll be like, Mr. Davis, I really don't want to go to the fire academy. I don't want to be a firefighter. And I look right at him and I go, great, don't.
Okay. Yeah.
You don't have to. And they'd
Yeah.
be shocked. They'd be like, wait, really? Yeah, you don't have to. You want to be a firefighter? Be a firefighter. You don't want to be a firefighter? There's plenty of other jobs out there that you can do as an EMT or paramedic. And one of the things that we're starting to see, at least here, and I'll keep this brief because this would be a whole nother podcast. We're starting to see a transition, at least in the local regional area. I don't know if I can really say to the fact of statewide, but local regional area, where you're starting to have some fire departments that are hiring single cert. So they're hiring single cert EMTs, they're hiring single cert paramedics. And again, that
oh,
varies. That varies from where you're at and department and all that, individual department needs. But that's a phenomenon we really haven't seen since the late 80s, when I first started. Full disclosure, I was hired as a paramedic by my department and then sent through the fire academy. So that's the reason why my first shift, we had a fire I couldn't go into because I actually started at the fire department a week before the academy started. And then, of course, the following
oh.
week I'm in the academy, and that was my job to get through the academy for the first part of it. I hope that answers your question. It's not a simple answer, and that's just because there's so many variations.
All right. Well, that was, I appreciate that answer. And it actually, I guess, clears up some stuff, as in, it depends on where you are. King for a day, Glenn Davis, King for a day. Yeah. What do you think? Should it be EMT, paramedic, firefighter? Does it matter? Do you think it adds, takes away? I'm very interested in the world of how that all works.
Another great question, and I'll tell you how I've answered that before, because I still stick by it. You know, it, the question would be, Mr. Davis, what do you think is the best EMS system? And he's like, oh, he's going to say fire because he's a firefighter. I'm like, no. So the best EMS system is the EMS system that the community can afford, because
Hmm, that's fair.
nationwide,
Yeah.
the majority that you see. This also goes for firefighting as well. So shout out to the volunteers out there. So full disclosure, I ended my career as a volunteer. Usually it goes volunteer and then you become paid. So
Yeah.
the last truck I stepped off of as a volunteer firefighter paramedic. So, but really it comes down to that individual community. It comes down to individual community. And you've got a lot of communities out there, especially rural areas, where they rely solely on volunteer, whether it's volunteer firefighter, volunteer
Yeah.
EMT, or volunteer paramedic.
Yeah.
And, my heart goes out to them, and they need our support. But king for a day, it's whatever that community can afford. That's really what it comes down to. I could come
Great
across and
answer.
say, oh, everybody needs to be, fire-based EMS. Then you're going to have communities that will be like, how?
Yeah.
Yeah,
How?
that's
There's
fair.
we can't, we're just don't have that funding source. So it really comes down to what that community can afford. If
Great
king,
answer.
if king for a
Great
day.
answer, because I didn't even think about didn't well, I guess I've never lived anywhere where they didn't, I guess, have one or, that's
Yeah.
okay,
Well,
sorry, no.
if king for a
Yeah.
day, fully fund your first responders. There you go. Fully
Well,
fund
yeah,
them.
fair enough.
Uh,
Yeah, yeah. No, 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 I
whatever,
appreciate it.
you know,
That's amazing.
whatever truck they're on, it doesn't matter to me. They've all got that duty and that commitment. I know I'm talking to fellow first responders. We've all got that same duty and commitment to help. I mean, it's Isaiah 6:8 over and over again. Whom shall we send? We all
Yeah.
raised our hand,
We all
at
did.
one point.
Yeah.
So
That's
great
awesome.
question.
I love it. And I want to lead this question off by saying we have really tried hard with our podcast to get first responders that weren't cops. We have had some success with getting firefighters, but a lot of them were not in the state of Florida. I think he's our first Florida firefighter that we've had. And we worked alongside them as cops.
Mhm,
We'd pull up to the calls and
mhm.
you need me to guard this hose? I'm on it. I got it, sir. I'm gonna do
I
that.
got you.
I got you.
I can't
Nobody's
put
coming
fires out
through.
with bullets.
Um, we
Mm-mm.
like for me, firefighting, when you said I loved firefighting, I don't even know what that means. So
Yeah,
it is a
for sure.
two-part question. Part one of that question is tell me what did you love about firefighting? And because of our ignorance of outside of just our little piece that we did with firefighters, what were some of the day-to-day realities of being a firefighter?
A lot of cleaning bathrooms, a lot of cleaning the bay floors,
Yeah,
a lot of
I love it.
rolling,
I
a,
knew
lo-
it.
a lot of rolling heavy water-soaked hose. Um, yeah, some puppet shows were thrown in there, some pub ed, a lot of pub ed. Um, yeah, all at smoke detector, oxy checks, helping out with fire inspections. Yeah, the non-glamorous stuff.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so a lot of that goes with it too. But no, just I loved fighting fire. And I would get very, very basic. It was, fire bad, fire must go out now. And that I and apologies to any anthropologists or paleontologists out there. I know I'm going to say it wrong, but I would get very Cro-Magnon. It'd be like, Krog, hey, fire. Krog, put fire out now. And then, okay, fire's out. Oh, Krog's sad. No more fire. Um, but yeah, that's what it was for me, And I'm not going to come out here and come across because people are going to be watching this, and I know that I worked with, be like, yeah, he was not God's gift to firefighting. Never said I was, um, but I knew what I needed to do, and I, would get the
You know
job
what?
done, and I really enjoyed doing it.
You know what? Thank you for saying that, because I hope that we don't come off that way. I know you don't, Mo, but I try very hard because I have a big personality, so it's like, oh, he thinks he's the shit. I try very hard to, and I'm still trying to get some of these. Some of them are still working, but I am nothing without the people that mentored
Mhm.
me. And we've
Yep.
talked. We don't use their full names because they don't want that yet, but like Batman, are the homicide detective extra. There are people that are far better investigators than I could ever hope to dream. The way they're like the beautiful mind, where they could just see things in their head
Mhm.
that inspire me to be better. So I'm constantly humbled by people like that. So I love that they're like, I loved it. I did my absolute best at it, but no, I'm not sitting here trying to say I was the prototype or anything like that. I thank you for saying that.
I was taught by the best. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, no, for sure.
In fact, when I transitioned to my second department, I'd already had some time on the job, and it was time for me because at the time when you start a new department, you start over from the bottom. So it wasn't coming in, at this level or whatever. You start off at the bottom. You're a probie all over again. So I went in, and it was time for me to do extrication training, which I had already had. I had already been on an extrication unit, And it was actually a buddy of mine that I know for a long, long time who was the extrication Jedi. And he was going to be the one teaching me. And he looked at me with a side grin and he goes, "All right, so you think you know extrication? We're going to find out." And I got taught things I never heard of, got taught things I'd never experienced. And I had to work extra hard to get that certification done and to be successful at it. And there was no slack given, none whatsoever. And he may be watching this podcast at some point, even though he's retired off the job now. But yeah, no names, but the Squad Father, he knows.
Squad Father.
He knows. That's one of the nicknames.
Yeah, I hear you.
But yeah, and the same thing with pumps and hydraulics. And yeah, was I a driver engineer? Yeah, I did. I was, qualified as a driver engineer. And I love pumps and hydraulics. But was I the absolute, top of the game on it? No. I got taught by people that were at the top of the game on it. Yeah.
Awesome.
I didn't know that you went to the bottom, and it just so you know, what happens in law enforcement too. I've worked for 5 different agencies, just bouncing around in my career. Yes, every single time they're like, "Oh, we need to pepper spray you and tase you." I'm like, "I've been pepper sprayed and tased like 4 times." Yeah, but not by our agency. I was like,
not by us.
God.
Right.
So it happens all across the board. Good to hear.
Okay. Yeah. Well, then you'll like the old joke. Hey, I've been a probationary firefighter 4 times. I'm really good at it.
They're like, good. You're going to do it again.
Perfect.
I will say, though, I do love that you pointed out, and I think this is a big thing in this, the life of being a first responder. And I think there's weight that these people have to understand they're carrying. The people that mentor you into this job, it is so they have such an impact on the person that you become, the first responder that you become, and it typically for those of us like you and we have become, then we become trainers, and the mentors and trainers that we become. So I think it is just incredible and important that people who are out there that are still doing the job, that are growing into that phase of it, to understand the gravity that, 30 years later, however long your career later, you're still talking about those individuals that really poured into you.
Absolutely.
So the other thing I wanted to, again, not being a firefighter, well, I always say that police and firefighter are like the sisters and brothers, but I feel like we're more like cousins. We fight like sisters and brothers, but we're more like cousins because of what we do is so vastly different. But I say the brother and sister thing too is that nobody can pick on either one of us while we're around each other.
Right.
That's not allowed.
No,
right.
No.
But there is, I feel like, an emotional toll and a mental toll. And there's parts that people don't see that is starkly different than what we as cop first responders encounter. Can you speak on that to say how that looks different for a firefighter?
I think I understand your question correctly, and I will echo what you're saying. There is a very vital interagency working relationship between fire, EMS, and law enforcement. We're all in the same family. I'll include 911 telecommunicators on that as well, and and including the crime scene investigators, because I worked with quite a few of those in the area that I was working in. So you're right. We definitely will. Hey, I can pick on him, but don't you dare pick on him.
Don't you dare.
That's my brother. That's my sister. That's different. But as far as what we see in, from the law enforcement side of the house and the fire EMS side of the house, I think just reflecting on it now on that question, it has a lot to do with our roles, our training, our objectives. Our role is to come in and mitigate whatever the situation is. You got a structure fire, we're going to take care of that. You got a hazardous material spill, we're going to take care of that. You got a technical rescue, we're going to take care of that. You're in a bad vehicle accident and you need traumatic care, you need to get, extricated from the vehicle. You're suffering from medical emergency, you can't breathe, you got stung by a wasp, whatever the case may be, you're having a stroke. So it kind of goes back to what I talked about. When the tones drop, we focus on that. We focus on the job. It's afterwards. So if I understand your question correctly, Mo, I think the way we approach the calls and then the way we react to or step away from the calls afterwards. I think a lot of it has to do with our training and then our roles and then our approach. Because I'll just use an example of a vehicle accident. Firefighter's going to approach a vehicle accident from one perspective. EMS is going to approach it from another. Law enforcement's going to approach it from another.
Yes.
Um, Firefighter's going to look for hazards and doing a 360 and looking for fluids on the ground. And do I need to drop a hose line? Law enforcement's going to look for traffic control. Um, EMS is going to look at, how many victims do I have? How many patients? Let me do a quick triage. What's the severity of those patients? Who needs to get out first? Those type of things. So I think it's the roles and the training. I think that leads into our perspective and then what we walk away from, or walk
Yeah.
away with, rather.
Yeah. With
You
that
know,
being said,
Glenn.
oh,
Oh, sorry, Mo. I'm stepping on you. I'm sorry. Do you? So I had experience. This didn't happen until I was in the Secret Service. It was the first time it ever happened. I was actually moving. I guess that part doesn't matter. I was moving vehicles from one part of the state to the next, and I came across an accident. The truck had just hit a tree, caught on fire. The passengers were actually still alive, and they ended up dying from the fire. And I was there trying to get them out. So they had the 911 call, and I'm like, and I had been in law enforcement at that point for like 12 years, something like that. I'm not saying that I don't know. I was getting like, where the fuck are you? Like I was yelling at the dispatcher, knowing it's not her fault in any way. It's just I'm seeing something very traumatic occur, and it's like it's happening a lot faster than probably in reality. Anyway, they come, they put it, and then we leave. But the fire chief actually called and said, "Hey, we're doing a debrief," and it was like the next Friday. And I was like, so me and my boss, we actually went, and it was so good because I immediately went and found the dispatcher, and I was like, "I'm so sorry. It wasn't." And she goes, "No," but it felt good to her it's just kind of that moment. But through everyone kind of gave their piece of the pie of what happened. And then when I spoke, I was like, this is what happened. And everybody in the room was like, I didn't realize they were still alive. They didn't know that. And so it kind of shifted. It almost was like they understood my tone on the call. Again, I'm not making excuses for that. Again, it wasn't her. It wasn't my proudest moment because not that I was being derogatory. I was just like, where the fuck are you? Like, you need to get here now. Like I was very amped up. Did you guys do debriefs like that after every call or specific calls, or how did that work for you? Because it was the first time I'd ever been a part of one.
Yeah. CISM has been part of my career since very, very early. I went through CISM training in early on. And later on, was attached with the CIS team. So that's been part of my career early on. I've been involved in several debriefs. Some of them were done the next shift. Some of them were done immediately following the call, and I still tell the story. And hats off to one of my mentors, who has been a big factor in my career since I first rode along as an EMT back in school. And they at the time were firefighter-paramedic, and of course they had gone up in their career, but later on, they ended up being one of my chief officers, and we had an extraordinarily involved, bad, multi-patient trauma call, multiple helicopters, multiple agency calls one particular Sunday morning. And he called for a debrief of everybody that was still on scene, not the ones who had already transported out to the hospital, but everybody that was still on scene, to just do an immediate debrief on scene to make sure everybody was okay before we started putting units back in service.
really?
And
Amazing.
sometimes that's controversial. I've shared that story with others, and they're like, "Wait, it was immediately after?" I'm like, "Yeah, it was on scene." And they're like, ah. I'm like, "Hey, at the time, under the circumstances, it was 100% completely appropriate." And the other agencies, because it was multi-agencies, the other agencies
Yeah.
were like, hey, I'm really glad we did this instead
Yeah.
of just jumping back on the truck.
Yeah.
And I have to say this, and I have to give credit to Chief Frank Lee because it's his quote. Um, but we spent a lot of time after a call getting the equipment back in service. We also need to spend as much time, if not more time, getting ourselves back in
Yeah.
service.
Yeah, for
Yeah.
So,
sure.
not my idea. I got to give credit. I got to give credit to Chief Lee on that one.
Like I said, 12 years, and it was the first time I ever had one, and
Ever
I was
did it.
like, this was something I'm not saying every single call, to your point, that's not what you're saying,
No.
but there are calls and moments when you're like, "Hey, man, we need to do a check. Just everyone, like, let's get on the what's going on?" Just that self-check, and it stuck with me. That was 5 years ago?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can say I had a long career in law enforcement, and the only time I really did debriefs were when we were doing negotiation calls. So when I was a negotiator, we did a debrief after every one of our call outs, but that was just it was to discuss what we had done, but it was also to talk about what we could do better, what we think went well, et cetera, et cetera. In the average everyday call that we went to as a deputy sheriff, I don't remember, even in some of the worst calls, homicides, I don't remember doing any debriefs after that. That leads me into my question. There obviously every field of especially first responders has its own culture. Do you think in the culture of firefighting, what are the expectations around, mental toughness, mental health? How is that um, culture in your sect of first responders?
Well, it's evolved. It's evolved greatly and it's evolved in a really good positive direction since I first started.
Awesome.
So in the early days, it was still the John Wayne mentality. It was still, yeah, we talk about it afterwards. We talk about a tough call, we'll joke, we'll have that gallows humor that helps us cope, or we think it helps us cope at the time. Um, and that was basically how it was treated. Then CISM came into the picture, then debriefing started. So it evolved. But I'm very thankful that early on in my career, I was actually off duty. We had a run of bad pediatric calls in our department, pediatric trauma, pediatric medical calls, a few deaths. There was nothing to be done, and everything was done.
Right.
Um, and I was off duty, and I was just walking through the station, and I hear the chief call my name. And I'm like, wait a second, I'm off duty. Okay, what I do? And
Yeah.
because it was still very early, it was still very early
Yeah.
in my career. And he just, hey, Davis, I want you to come in here and sit down. I'm like, okay, chief, not knowing what to expect. And
Right.
he simply wanted to know if I was okay. I was a new dad, and he knew
Oof.
about the calls.
Mm,
And he just wanted 5 minutes, was one of his firefighter paramedics to make sure I was okay.
it's amazing.
And I never forget what he said to me. He goes, all right, I just want to make sure because I know these are going to be the calls years from now that are going to wake you up at 3 o'clock in the morning. And at the time, I didn't think about it. I was very
Yeah.
early on in the career. I'm like, okay, hey, cool. Thanks, chief. Glad I'm not in trouble. Appreciate the support,
Yeah.
and I'm, on my way. But years later, especially everything that I've gone through now, which hopefully we'll have some time to talk about. And then,
Yes.
the changes since then, um, the words just echo in me because the 3 o'clock in the morning wake up, I went through that. I went through that years later, um, quite a bit, quite a bit.
I
Can
think that's a good
you
segue. I mean, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I was gonna
Yeah.
ask, can you share with us a little
Um,
bit about what your struggles were, as much as you're
so
comfortable with?
I had some, and this is all in retrospect and all with the help and support of my wife, who, you know, we didn't have peer support like we do now, and we didn't have terms like trauma informed and culturally competent. It was just the
Yes.
two of us
Yeah.
trying to make our way through it. And I would become the brick wall. I would shut down. I would not talk and not smile. And, you know, all these things that she did, we can now apply terms to them and go, hey, you were doing these things without any formal training, without any of this
Yeah.
stuff. But she would give me space. She would, see how I was when I came in off duty in the morning, whether or not I was talking, whether or not I was smiling, whether or not, now was the time to approach me, or if she needed to wait.
Right.
She would try and see if she can get me to crack a smile. She would tell jokes. She would just act goofy. She would sing songs. She'd dance in the kitchen. Just things to try to break me out of that. And I would shut down. And
Right.
she would give me that space well enough to where once she told me this the other day as we were talking about this podcast, she goes, once I saw that you would at least crack a smile, then I knew you were ready to talk.
Right.
And so it was talk therapy and just allowing me just to pour out and being supportive. And then, each time I always felt this huge weight just came off. And you are right. I needed to open up. I needed to talk about it. Keeping that stuff in is not healthy, but it was just the two of us. But the three
Right.
o'clock in the morning, yes, that was me waking up, still asleep, thrashing out, yelling, screaming, her trying to wake me up, to break me out of that. Um, she just reminded me that as her daughter was growing up, and we'll talk about that hopefully a little bit later if we got time, how our daughter is now relearning who her dad is because now it's after.
Yeah.
But she knew she couldn't wake up dad. If dad was home and sleeping after, 36, 48 hours, whatever the case may be, don't
Right.
wake up dad because you don't know how he's going to wake up.
Mm.
Yeah.
And that was rough.
Yeah.
There were letters I wrote to my wife that I would pour everything out and I would say, don't open this for 10 years. Don't open this for 20 years. Of course, being the good wife that she is, she immediately ripped them open.
Of course we do.
Hey,
It's what we do as wives.
where's his head at? Yeah.
It's happening. Yeah.
And yeah, truth be known, more than once, I was close. I was very close um, to becoming one of those statistics. Probably closer than I care to admit, but my wife knows. Um, but yeah, it was a very rough patch for a while, and I can't thank her enough. She stuck it out. She stuck with me. She wouldn't let that John Wayne, oh, I can handle it. She'd be like, oh no, because funny thing happened to her on her way to either nursing school or police academy. Yeah, she got married. That was the two things she wanted to do.
That's funny. So while your wife was watching you at home kind of go through these struggles, was your work performance ever affected, or were you able to put on that face and go to work every single day?
That's the people I work with. Uh,
Mhm.
could I have a hair trigger? Yep. This is retrospect and being 100% honest. Could I have a hair trigger? Yep. Well, it was actually commented to me by one of my chief officers. You've got some really big buttons to push. And of course, I was like, no. And they're like, yeah, you do. So yeah, now that we can put terms with it, the hypervigilance,
Yeah.
the not sitting with my back to a door if we were out somewhere. Um, I would scan areas for. This is being a firefighter. I'd scan it for sprinkler heads and fire protection systems, and hey, is this a sprinkle building or not? And what are the exits and those type of things.
Yeah.
But the hypervigilance, the overreaction, the disproportionate emotional reaction. Hey, the dog's just barking. That's what they do.
Yeah.
They just bark. And I would be like, they've got to shut up now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Was there ever a, like, formal diagnosis at some point, or what was your moment where you knew you needed to do something different?
Okay. So two parts to that. So
Okay.
while teaching, and I taught on this, right? That's the thing.
Wow.
We're really good at helping others,
Yes.
but I was not good at going, hey, I need more help. Um, because mental health and wellness is part of the EMT and paramedic curriculum. It's part of the firefighting curriculum, and it was one of my favorite things to teach. And, I'd pass on all these little kernels that I picked up and these little things on how to survive the job. But at the same token, while I was teaching, of course, we would use scenarios, and I had a very strict rule: no names, no locations, and I would do composite scenarios.
Mhm.
People would ask me, Mr. Davis, was that one of your calls?
Mm.
Could be.
Yeah.
But a lot of times they were amalgams. They were, my call, another person's call, another person's call, and just kind of put them all
Right.
together. But
Right.
sometimes in doing these scenarios in class, it would trigger a flashback.
I
Mm.
see.
And from going through this with my wife, she was the one that actually uncovered everything, including the one night when I finally collapsed on the kitchen floor, just in a ball in a fetal position, and I'm done. I'm over everything. But she was able to trace it all back to the first two domestic violence calls I had as an EMT. So when people ask, when did it start? It's cumulative.
Yeah.
It started in the first 6 months.
Right.
One was a very high profile attempted murder case. And then the other one was, family versus family. Both of them were stabbing events. And so I would have these triggers. I would have flashbacks while I was teaching, and I would literally recognize them. And I would tell the students, hold on, give me a second. In about 90 seconds, I'd collect myself. It's like, okay, let's go on with the lesson. Um, so it was there. I was aware of it. I thought I had a good handle on it to it. And this is kind of where we're going with this, Mo. Um, Last January, my wife came to me and she said, you do not have a good handle on your PTSD as you think you do.
Hmm.
And that was the
Hmm.
wake up. That was, okay, that's not a, yes, dear, I'll fix the bathroom door that, has been broken for 18 months. That
Right.
is, okay, I need to do something. I need to find something. So,
Well, you know what I'm just now realizing, though I probably should have known this before. Because think about, I don't know, the thousands of domestic violence calls you and I, whatever.
Yeah.
When do you call EMS and fire? When they're
When
really
it's
fucking
really
bad.
bad.
So they only know
The
the
really
really
bad
fucking
ones.
bad ones.
Yeah. It's wild.
Ah, man, I don't the realizations just hit me sometimes.
when
Sorry.
Yeah.
PD says expedite and there's no further information available, yeah,
Yeah.
we know we're going to walk into, because that is seldom
Yeah.
ever
Yeah.
turns out you walk in and you got a bunch of Leos just standing around smoking cigarettes going, hey, how you doing? No, it's not
Oh,
that at all.
shit's
It's
going
Yeah.
not
wrong.
that. It is all hands on deck. And yeah,
It's wild.
kind of going back to your story about the vehicle accident. You actually hit on a key point. And this is kind of what Mo was asking about the fire EMS and law enforcement perspectives on what we do. We're usually called, like you said, after it happened. We are very seldom the witness to
Yeah.
when it happened. And I had also forgotten about this until we started talking about it. But my actual first call, my actual first response was before I even started working as a paramedic. It was 4 days after I passed the state test. I'm sitting in a car with a buddy of mine. We're heading to the movies, and right in front of us, we witness multiple vehicles versus a bicyclist,
Oh,
Jesus.
and literally
That's awful.
watched it in front of us.
That's
oh,
awful.
And I only passed the paramedic test 4 days ago.
yeah.
And of
Jeez.
course, my buddy is shoving me out the car going, you're the medic, go. What?
Looking to you for answers. Yeah.
I
You're the
took a
one.
test
So,
4 days
so,
ago.
so when you said that response time felt forever,
Yeah.
it did. And even though the response time was 4 minutes or less, it seemed like an eternity. So
Yeah.
you sparked a memory. You sparked a long ago memory. Yeah.
There you go.
Wild.
That's how it happens.
Yeah.
But I want to get to ETMS, not to jump the gun, Mo,
Yes.
but 'cause I'm just fascinated by, and I'm
Yes.
so thankful because we've had a lot of, I don't know what you call them, patients, clients, I don't know what you call them, but
Patience. Yeah.
could not speak higher, us touting the values, but I'm like, well, so what does it do? They're like, I don't know, man. You just put a machine on your head.
And you're
So
better.
you feel better. It
Okay.
works. They
All
just
right.
want to be like, it works.
So here's my disclaimer. Potentially.
Yeah.
This is what can
Yeah.
happen.
For sure. For sure.
I didn't know anything about it. I found out about it from a fellow firefighter who decided I would give it a go. And I went through it, and it was an absolute game changer. But so I went through it, and we'll talk more about the science behind it and what it is and how it actually works, and what ETMS really means. Within 3 days, drastic improvement in sleep. That was the number one thing that I walked away with just within 3 days. I could fall asleep quicker. If I got in the middle of the night, I got back to sleep quicker, and it was really restorative. So, we're talking with our family here, first responders, we wear sleep deprivation and caffeine addiction like merit badges.
Yes, we
Love it.
do.
And, to finally have true restorative sleep, to no longer have to grab that coffee first thing in the morning. I was the one that would walk into Starbucks and go, "Yeah, give me an extra shot of espresso." Sir, there's already 2 shots in that. Yeah, I know. Give me another one. Um,
Keep
so
them in.
yeah, what's hypertension and AFib among friends? But so finally able to break that
Uh-huh.
caffeine addiction
Yeah.
and actually get true restorative sleep was a game changer. And now that we know so much that sleep is the foundation for health across the board.
Yes. Yeah.
So about halfway through the treatment, I'm at the house relaxing, and my wife goes, "What are you doing?" I go, "Nothing. Had a day off from work." And she goes, "No, really, right? No, really. What are you thinking about?" And I said, "Nothing. It's never been your answer.
Mm.
It's never been your answer." I go, "Yeah,
Never
I
been your
know."
real answer. Yeah.
I go, "Well," she goes, "I know when you're thinking. I know when you're upset. I know when you're angry because your ears will turn red. I mean, the smoke comes out of your ears. Your mind doesn't stop." I said, "Yeah, I know. The 300 cable channels go 24/7, 365." And I thought about it after she said that to me, and I'm like, wow, it actually quieted down.
Really?
Amazing. So got done with the treatment, got to the end of it. And, my wife turns to look at me and she says, quote unquote, "After 33 years of marriage, I finally got my husband back."
I've actually tried to get other buddies of mine that I'm like, "Hey, I just heard about this ETMS thing," and they're like, "Ah, bro," they all give me the hokey pokey. I'm not, did you experience that, or were you at the point where like I'm just willing to try whatever, or like how did you get over that? I guess skepticism, if there was any, I guess.
Well, it was two things. It was two things. Number one, it was the testimony of a colleague that said, "Hey, this has been the experience." It was another thing, me looking into it, from the medic side of the house. I'm very big into research, obviously,
Right.
and I said, "Okay, I'm gonna give a shot." I literally said, "I'll be the guinea pig," because it had only been running for about 6 or 7 months in the state,
You're a braver
and
man than I.
I'm like, "Well, remember what my wife said, right? You got to
Yeah.
do
What?
something."
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it was on non-pharmaceutical, so that appealed to me.
Yeah.
So I looked into a little bit of the science of it, and I'm like, okay, let's go through it. I'll give it a shot. And I literally told my neurotechnician on day one, and this ended up being, I guess, self-fulfilling. I said, "If this works as good as you say it does, you won't get me to shut up about it." And here we are.
Here we
There
are.
we go. Yeah.
Here we are. But yeah.
I wanna get because you were someone who did this, you talked about the sleep. What were the things that was after day 3? Once you had completed the process, what was life like after that? What was your did you get,
mm,
mental clarity?
yeah,
How did things change for you, essentially?
yeah. Uh, Big improvement, and we talk about cognition. Big improvement in cognition. We focus a lot on PTSD and sleep because those are the big ones. We across 2,000 plus patients treated across the 3 states that the company covers. You got about 60%, thereabouts 60% reduction in PTSD. So we talk about those two things probably the most.
That's huge.
But potential, it's also anxiety, depression, addiction, and cognitive processing. So that clarity of thought, that quieting, all that background noise to
Right.
to think more clearly without a high dose of caffeine, just to
Yeah.
function. So those are all potentials that go along with it. Um, my wife, he smiles more. Um, I said I would come back to her, my daughter. I mean, she was born a few years after we'd been married a few years, and then we had our first child, and that's a whole nother story. And so she only knew me on the job.
Right.
That's what she grew up with, and saying goodnight to
Right.
daddy at the fire station and all that, and not waking up daddy when he's sleeping, right?
Right.
So now I'm back into this mode of being sarcastic and cracking jokes and generally being hopefully a little more pleasant to have around the house. And, you know, my wife's like, what do you think of dad? Oh, he's different. Yeah, he's different. Yeah. Um, so that's one of the things they ask. It's one of the things they ask while you're going through treatment. What is your friends and family saying? What do they notice? What are you noticing? But what are your friends and family?
Yeah.
Buddy of mine that we've known each other a long time was talking with him soon after I'd finished the treatment. He knew I had a new job, but he didn't know what. And before I even got to say, hey, this is what ETMS is, he goes, let me stop you right there. Just in the time we've been talking, you're the most relaxed and laid back I have ever seen you, ever. Now go ahead and tell me what it's about. And
Yeah.
I wasn't ready for that. I was like, okay, he noticed. Wow, cool. Yeah, this works.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
awesome.
At least it worked for me.
Hmm. So now explain to us in simple terms, what is ETMS?
All right. So TMS is transcranial magnetic stimulation, or TMS. Been around for 3+ decades. Started out in the UK, and basically what it is, it's an electromagnet. We use a dual coil from our partner that it basically cycles on and off low intensity electromagnetic impulse, and they are placed in a specific area across the frontal lobe of the brain. And as it cycles on and off for about 15 minutes, that
Okay.
impulse allows the brain to begin to heal. We'll talk about that in a second. Specifically, what we do with ETMS, and this is where I get to nerd out on the medical tech. Specifically with ETMS, we use from another one of our partners an EEG-guided TMS. So when you come in for your first day, they do all this baseline testing before you even start treatment. And one of those is a 10-minute EEG, and it's completely wireless. It's like putting on a bike helmet like the ones we've had forever that had the little vent slots in it. It's basically what it is.
Right.
And it's not the full intensive hour to 2 hour EEG you might do with a neurologist. It's just 10 minutes, and they're only looking at one thing. They're looking at the alpha waveform, because the alpha waveform is where they can see the changes that we've experienced, through the course of our careers. And then our clinicians use that EEG data for a prescription, for lack of a better word, but for the protocol, for our neurotechnicians to set the settings on the TMS device specific to the individual. So my settings would be, not necessarily the same as the next person and the next person. And then as you go through the process, because for our program, it's a 20-session treatment. So it runs Monday through Friday for 4 weeks. Scheduling is done one-on-one. Full disclosure, I have nothing to do with scheduling. So I take care of the initial information, the initial pre-screening. Are you eligible? Because, of course, we're under contract to the state. There's very narrow guidelines, who's eligible, who's not.
Right.
First responders, retired first responders, and military veterans. And so I go through that initially, and then I hand you off to our medical team. You get medically cleared to start. And then once you're medically cleared to start, then that scheduling is one-on-one between you and the technician actually doing the treatment.
Okay.
So they'll take into account, what's your shift schedule, what's your schedule like, when can you come in, that kind of thing. Here's the availability based upon the other patients we have, and that type of thing. So it's very individualized scheduling. But through the series of these 20 treatments, and one of the things we do see is consistency. So that's the reason why you have a 5-day-a-week, 4-week treatment cycle. It's that consistency in treatment that could potentially lead to the best outcomes. And then one of the things that I found out as a patient the first time I went through it, because we do another EEG at the midpoint and we do another EEG at the end point, and you're also meeting with one of our physicians or one of our PAs in a telehealth. So you're monitored all the way through,
Okay.
start to finish. How are you doing? How are you responding? Do we need to make any adjustments to the treatment level or whatever the case may be? But the one thing I was very interested to find out in talking with my provider in the last telehealth appointment was the brain is still healing even after the treatment. So potentially you can still realize benefits even after the treatment stops as your brain continues to heal. And as far as the effects on the brain, to kind of put it simply, is through TMS, it allows the brain through neuroplasticity to form new neural connections and basically get back into alignment. That's what they're seeing on the alpha waves. I'm not an EEG specialist, full disclosure. Hopefully EKGs, no problem. No problem. 12 EKGs, that's my wheelhouse. But EEGs, not so much. But what they see on the EEG data, and that's the reason why they're repeating is because they can actually see the changes, and then they correlate that with what your responses are on the cognitive brain tests that we do on an iPad, which have to do with like memory and recall and matching, all that kind of stuff. I have to be honest, when I went through it on day one, because I did cognitive psychology in grad school, I'm like, no problem. I've got this. I know how these tests work. I'm going to blow it out of the water. And I'm literally with the iPad and I'm thinking, my gosh, I'm a toddler. Why am I so slow? So there's that cognitive impact from that PTSD and sleep deprivation.
Yeah.
By the
Yeah.
halfway point, I'm a little faster. And by the end of it, I was like, done. Yeah, I'm good. So that's just a little glimpse. That's kind of the Cliff Notes version of what we do and what it's like to go through ETMS.
So interesting.
Questions. How much does it cost? I already know the answer.
Yes.
Okay. At least in the state of Florida. Okay. So
That's what we're talking about. Yeah.
let's be specific, state of Florida. Can I give a shout out to our state rep that allowed
Absolutely.
this to happen? All right. So mad respect and mad thanks to State Representative Danny Alvarez out of Hillsborough County. It's through his efforts that the state of Florida was gracious enough to cover this completely cost-free to all first responders as defined by statute, and also retired first responders and military veterans. Florida certified first responders, got that whole part out there. And military veterans in the state of Florida, it is absolutely cost-free. My follow-up to that is the only thing it costs you is time.
Yes.
And in the grand scheme of things, at least for my own part, 4 weeks went by very, 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 very quick. I mean, it's been now almost a year. So I went through it. And after a year and 1 day that you complete treatment, currently with the state, you're allowed to go back through a second time should you feel the need. It's not an automatic, it's not a have to, because people will ask, is there a maintenance? Do I have to repeat this every 3 months or whatever? It's like, no, it's not like that. But after a year and 1 day, you are eligible to go through
Again, at no cost.
a second time at no cost.
Wow.
As it stands right now, today.
I understand. Yep.
And it's not a have to. You may be
Right.
like, oh, I'm still doing great. I'm good. Or maybe like, yeah, I think I need to come back through. Maybe some things happened in the last 12
Right.
months, and
Yeah.
maybe I'll benefit.
That's
Well,
amazing.
Well, because the people we've talked to, that I have talked to, have all been retired. So
Right.
you're talking about even if you're active. So I think that's I appreciate that shout out. I didn't know that regarding like, hey, you're active. You sought the treatment. You got it. You're still working. Shit's still going on. You might need to come back. So that's good to know. I'm going to flip the questions in my head. Is this like a preventative thing, or is there a way to like go in to be like, I don't know if I need it. I feel like, is there like a screening? Like, hey, I guess I don't know what I'm trying to ask, but like, is it a preventative thing where like, do I have to wait till I'm being told by my wife, you need to go fucking do something because your collapsed on the floor to go get it? Or is it like, hey, I just want to see if I'm, need this?
Well, I think the best
Might
way
be
I
a
can
hard
answer.
question.
Yeah. And no, great question. And I think the best part I can answer that is I would probably defer to one of our physicians as far as preventive. However, I will go back to what we talked about before, that it's beyond just PTSD and sleep and anxiety and depression. It's that cognitive processing. And here's another podcast on cognitive load theory. We, in our professions as first responders and also military veterans, we've got all this information, all this data coming into us, and we have to make split-second decisions.
Yes.
Whether it's on a call out and you're rolling out of the cruiser, or whether or not you're the company officer directing a structure fire response, or you're the medic in charge, directing a trauma alert and landing a helicopter and all this other kind of stuff. You're having to make split-second decisions under pressure on a regular basis. And that's what we're trained for. That's what we signed up for. So can there be a potential benefit in that cognitive processing? And some of the stuff that I've seen, some of the stuff that I've experienced, some of the data that I have read, that I've looked at, potentially, yes, it can improve that cognitive processing aspect of it. So, um, to answer your question, you don't have to wait until it's really bad. Let's put it that way. You don't have to wait till it's really bad. You don't have to wait until you're down that deep dark hole. Um, has been related. I don't know if it's been related on this podcast, but there's also been a local news story that was done on ETMS, and the individual was talking about that. So to answer your question, you don't have to wait. And it doesn't matter if you've been on the job 3 years or if you've been on the job 30 years. But you did bring up a very good point. This is a discussion we're having in some other spaces as well, and that's support for our retirees. And then that's the reason why I was so happy July 1, 2025 in the state of Florida said, we're going to cover retirees, Florida State certified first responders,
Huge.
because that's a discussion we're having in several different spaces right now. And I'm not a military veteran. I've got family of military veteran, worked with military veterans quite a bit. So I'm familiar with some of the out processing that they go through when they're going
Right.
to step away.
Right.
And unfortunately, I mean, maybe you all know better than I do, and I know it varies from department to department to agency, but our retirees need more support.
For sure.
Yes,
They
that's
need
every
more.
agency.
They need more support, and there are some agencies that are already actively engaging this conversation now.
Right.
But thank you for your service. Now let's talk about when the tones stop and what's your plan. Because I'll tell you, remember that list I said that I was almost a part of? That was a list I kept for
Mm.
a long time. And
Yeah.
when it got to double digits,
Right.
and got to slow down for a second. The ones who got me in the last probably 8 years or so, we talked about mentors, and
Yes.
I started losing my mentors, more than one. But there was one in particular that really hit me hard, and
Yeah.
it took me a long time to process it. I could not go to their celebration of life. I
Yeah.
wanted to. I wanted to, but this was an individual that I've known and worked with for. So why am I here? Why are we talking? Why did I
Yes.
change careers? Um, because to prevent one more.
Yeah.
That's why.
100%.
That's why.
Yeah. And I think one thing you pointed out just now that I think is so important is when the calls stop, people do not realize the impact that it has on the individual, that cumulative effect that has been going on for that 20, 25, 30-year career. And it's so abrupt. People don't realize how abrupt the stop is. And
Mhm.
there's so many things that come along with that abrupt stop. There's all those emotions that flood in. There's the loss of some identity for some people in the career, and there's all these things that are going on, and they do they do that without the safety net of where do I go, and like you said, having the support of what do I do next. And I just say hats off to you guys because you are bringing this service here. Hats off to Danny Alvarez for pushing so hard to get this covered for our active and retired, because we're losing a lot of them at that phase, and it's very disheartening. So thank you for pointing that out.
Yeah, and shout out Danny Alvarez. I've actually been talking to him, and I've talked to him on the phone a few times. I'm trying to get him on the show, but he's
Yeah,
he's
he's busy.
Busy
he's
guy.
doing his thing. And listen, he's doing the Lord's work, so I have nothing but support for him. But I do not work for ETMS. I am not a scientist. I'm not a doctor. I am none of those things. But what I will say, you alluded to potential effects for depression, addiction, anxiety, and all that. For me, PTSD is all those things, because, and what I mean is not necessarily a disorder, but they start self-treating with alcohol, narcotics of whatever form, illegal or illegal, whatever they might be. And then it starts creating that anxiety. Because I've talked to several people, some on the show, they knew it was happening. It was almost like out of body, like they could see like, "What is wrong with you? Why are you doing this?" But they couldn't stop or help themselves. So then it almost made it worse, and it kinda
Yeah.
like they could see themselves going down this path, and they're like, "I need to, like, pull the ripcord," but they didn't know how to do it, and so they just kept going and going and going. Um, so to your point, if you can quiet that noise and you can get
Mhm.
that sleep, and I love that you I wrote down cognitive load theory because you're the second person on the show to say that. We have not dived into it, so we might have to come back on that because yeah.
Yeah.
But if you can begin that healing process, the other things that I just mentioned have potential. I'll use the, you know,
Right. Right. Got to use a disclaimer. I can't point and say you will experience this
100%. Yeah, I'm not going to say that,
potentially.
but
Potentially.
potentially, what a game changer though to get your not. I love that your wife said, "I got my husband back," but to get your life back, like how much how that must make you feel, especially for the ones I'm talking about, where they're like they see themselves and they're like, "I'm ruining my marriage, my relationship with my children, all these things," and to feel like, "Hey, I've been given this back." I mean, holy crap, what a gift!
Yeah.
No,
Amazing.
I mean, full disclosure, you brought up a really good point. I advocated for this. I taught others, tools on how to, manage and cope with this. Uh, but I never took that good hard look in the mirror. I would
Glenn,
turn my
yeah,
head and walk by, and oh, everything's
yeah.
great. And it took somebody that was obviously, my better half to say, look, sorry, Sparky, you're wrong.
Yeah.
It's been a long time.
Thank
And
God she had the courage to say that, because sometimes I think spouses and family members are in a place where they don't have the courage, or they just say, I can't. And
I don't know.
they
Yeah,
get the divorce. They do all these
yeah,
things,
yeah,
and thank God that she didn't give up.
yeah. We've joked for years that we'll have a I don't know, podcast or presentation over, and part one will be, so you want to marry a firefighter, and then
I
part
love it.
two, part two is my wife's like, well, we need to have part two of to the firefighter. So you sure you want to get married?
Yeah.
Um, so
I
yeah,
well,
love
Glenn,
it.
to your point, it's fun having Mo here, and she is, while she is not my better half per se, she is holds a dual role as mentor and friend, and so she was that one because I am the definition of what you were describing, where I gave great advice while behind me was a fucking mess, and yeah, so I fully understand what you're saying. Love you,
Before
Mo.
we move in, I love you. Before we move into the kind of like talking about how people can get advocacy and those kind of things, I just
Yes.
had a question when we were talking about the sessions. Some people might look at it and go, 20 sessions is a lot. It's overwhelming. What does a session look like? Can you give a brief overview of that?
sure can. So this is part of what I do now. I have conversations with one-on-one. I meet with departments, agencies. I speak at meetings and whatnot, first responders and veterans groups and all of that. So day zero is what we call your first day in the clinic after you've been medically cleared. After our medical team has said, "Yep, you're cleared to start." Technician will reach out to you and schedule you for day zero. And day zero is about 45 minutes to an hour, and that's when we do the baseline testing. That's the 10-minute EEG, the cognitive testing on the iPad, and then also what we call the scales. And those are your standardized survey questions related to PTSD, anxiety, depression, drug and alcohol use, sleep quality. Sleep quality is a big thing of what we keep track of. So that's all of your baselines before you even come in for treatment. And then as you begin your day 1 through 20, I tell everybody I talk with, plan on about 30 minutes door to door when you walk in and walk out. Treatment session itself with TMS is about 15 minutes or so, give or take. But I tell everybody, plan at least a half hour. You may have somebody before you finishing up and then you start. So plan on at least a half hour. And then the other thing, people usually laugh when I tell them this, all of our clinics have snack bars because your brain, our technicians will tell you, they refer to it as brain gym. So your
Mhm.
brain's getting a workout and your brain is burning through a lot of glucose. So they will remind you, eat before you come in, get a snack before you come in, make sure you're hydrated before you come in. They will remind you as you're walking out the door, hey, get a snack, okay, get a drink, before you roll out the door. Um, they'll also remind you, make sure that you're getting your sunlight, your red light therapy between 7:30 and 11:30 a.m. So there's holistic parts of this and reminders that they also will tell you, because that red light therapy helps start your own internal body clock for sleep. And then, of course, we
Right.
haven't got into the 24-hour shifts or the working in third shift or all that goes along with it. And they'll also talk about that sleep hygiene, creating that 100% dark environment, shutting the screens off. We now know how detrimental that blue light is. It just
Yes.
feeds that dopamine. It wakes your brain back up. And if you get up in the middle of the night, don't even have the phone in the room.
No.
That's the hardest thing. Oh, I'm going to check one thing. I'm going to check. Something may have happened. If something happened, I think we're all going to know about it. So
Yeah.
something may have happened. It's two things. It's breaking the caffeine addiction and breaking that blue screen addiction. So
Yeah.
there'll be these other holistic reminders from your technicians from time to time, as you're going through this. So I hope that answers your question.
Yes, it does. Thank you. Because, like I said, when people, I think it's important when you're dealing with someone who is struggling with mental health that you try to remove as many hurdles as you possibly can,
Yes.
because they are already discouraged in many cases. So if we can break it down to the lowest common denominator and make it like, listen, it's 30 minutes. Yes, it's going to be for 20 days, but it's 30 minutes. And in after those 30 days, this is what you could feel like. So, um, one other thing that I know that we encounter a lot is the stigma around mental health. When you're dealing with individuals and you're talking to departments, what is your message to those first responders that are struggling and then have the stigma of all the stigmas that come along? What about my job? What if
Mhm.
somebody finds
Mhm.
out?
Right.
How can you talk on that?
Great question. And when I talk with groups, it's not necessarily that, I'm sitting there going, hey, I'll sign you up right now, because some people don't want to, hey,
Yeah.
not right now, let me call you later. Um, but yes, those two things that you mentioned are what I see as our two primary goals: access to care, number one, and number two, combating that stigma that unfortunately I have to admit is still there. Maybe
Yeah.
not as much as it once was, but it is still
Right.
there. And just trying to be open and honest with people with my own experience. And now I'm stepping back into areas with people who have known me, and worked with me and been on those bad calls, and, students that I've taught, and they're seeing this very raw, very unplugged version of, hey, I was on a fetal position in my kitchen, curled up, crying my eyes out over a pediatric call the umpteenth time. You know, wow, really? Yeah, really, that was me.
Right.
So I think that helps try to break some of that stigma down,
Hmm.
just being open and honest about our own experience. And then for the old individual, because sometimes it'd be like, hey, I don't need this, but I'm going to give it to a buddy of mine.
Right.
Okay, cool, no problem. Pass along the information. That's great. Have them give me a call. It's 100% confidential. Of course, patient confidentiality is a big thing. Fully informed patient decision making is a big thing for what we do. Um, we don't report to departments. We don't say, hey, so and so's coming for treatment. Can't. That's patient confidentiality.
Right.
Um, we don't report into any agencies or anything like that. It's completely internal, completely confidential. And if somebody wants to share, you know, with their coworkers about their own experience, that's entirely up to them.
Right.
But as far as combating that stigma, I think just being open and honest and telling our own story. Sometimes I think that helps to give space, to folks that go, wow, okay, he's struggled with this for decades.
Yeah.
And he finally admitted to himself, okay, maybe I'm ready to have that conversation. And the other thing is to let people know is there are so many entities. There are so many groups of people throughout the region, throughout the state, that are first responder and, military veteran focused, um, for overall health, not just mental health, but mental health and
Hmm.
wellness. We're
Yeah.
here. We're here. We're ready.
Yeah.
We want to help. Just call. That's all you got to do is call. Just one phone call. I mean, that's what I did.
If you
I
try
made,
to,
I made a phone call. That's what I did.
how can people find you or find ETMS? I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
The website is
Not
ETMS.
you.
Yeah. The website is etmsflorida.com. I'll make sure you all have that information to add into the podcast. And they can either sign up online right at the homepage. There's a button up at the upper right-hand corner that says sign up. And when they fill out their information, they'll be contacted by myself or one of our other peer mentors located around the state. And we'll reach out to them and we'll go through the initial pre-screening process, verify address, verify background, verify, you're certified for a first responder in those specific categories. Military veteran, do you ever DD 214? We got a few contraindication questions that we go through initially. Like if you have any metal in your head or neck, obviously that's going to be a stop right there for TMS, and then not just for ETMS, that'd be for TMS. Obviously that's going to be a full stop. And then after that point, then the individual is sent our complete medical patient forms electronically. And that's where they fill out the full medical history that they have, full prescription medications, allergies, anything else the medical team needs to know to review. And that's gone through an extensive medical review by our medical team before they clear somebody. So there are several quality assurance steps along the process. Are they eligible? Are they medically cleared? Can they start the treatment? If there's ever any questions along the way before you even start, one of our medical team will reach out to you directly for clarity. Hope that answers your question, I think. Yeah.
This is exactly what I thought this episode would be about. I think it's so important. And I've seen too the trend that ETMS seems to have a lot of people who were first responders who were then
Mhm.
became patients and then subsequently just believe in what it has done for them to the level that several of you guys have come to work for ETMS. So
Mhm.
that's something that I find just incredibly unique and why we've been striving to get one of you on the show. So any final thoughts of anything that you want to kind of put out there to make sure that people are aware of?
Gratitude for this opportunity to talk and to share with y'all. Gratitude for ETMS for being a possibility for me, and also being able to come on board and join the team and just share my story and talk to as many people as I can to hopefully get them the help that they need, and to let them know, the help is there. Don't do what I did. Don't do what I did. Don't wait so long. Don't wait so long until you're at that point. Whether or not you've convinced yourself that you're okay, or the opposite. You're not okay. But how do I reach out?
Yeah.
Just make the call. That's all you got to do. There's no judgment here. I guarantee that there is no judgments. Nobody's going to be viewed as, oh, you're weak. You should have been able to handle this. No, we already know from the statistics, the average individual is going to see, a handful of traumatic incidences, and first responders and military veterans, we see several hundred, plus on a regular basis throughout the course of a career, however long that may be. And as I was talking with a colleague, a scientist, counselor in this realm, and as I've learned now, stepping into this space, there are physical changes that occur to the brain, and there is help. There is help available. Um, just reach out. Just reach out, please, before it goes any further. Please.
Well said. Well said, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Glenn. Amazing. Thank you for sharing your story. Thank you for being so candid. Thank you for getting in with ETMS with your passion and wanting to help people as much as you do. We appreciate your time today, sir.
Thank you.